been looking forward to visiting some of Maine's many seaside towns, particularly York, Maine, which has many famous attractions, including several tall lighthouses that were scattered all over the town. One of those lighthouses belonged to my grandfather, and I was excited to be spending the long weekend with my grandfather, whom we affectionately called Grandpa Anton. When I got to the lighthouse, Grandpa Anton was waiting for me. After getting settled and taking our lunch, we got into his boat and began to boat all over the cove. It was such a beautiful sight to look at, with its crystal blue waters and natural stone cliffs. It was so peaceful that I understood why Grandpa Anton decided to retire here to Maine. There was hardly anything that could destroy this kind of tranquility. I began to feel a bit drowsy when, suddenly, I saw something in the corner of my eye. I looked to the direction and saw what looked like ripples in the water. I carefully walked over to get a closer view of the ripples. I could see the ripples were bigger up close, like something big had caused it somehow. I bent down to get a better look. Suddenly, something white and withered emerged from under the ripples and grabbed me by my shirt collar and pulled me into the water. As soon as my body hit the water, I started to struggle and tried to see what was happening. My eyes were stung due in part to the salt water, but I still managed to keep them open. I could see that what pulled me into the water was a withered, bone-white hand, and attached to the hand was a woman dressed in a murky-looking white dress. But it was the woman that frightened me the most. She looked like a withered corpse, with her soulless eyes, gaunt, skeletal face, and thin, cracked lips. Her hair was all over the water, all dark, like an octopus's tentacles. Her mouth was wide open, and I could see large, pointed teeth protruding out of them. She was as frightening as ever. I started to panic and struggled to free myself from her, but the more I struggled, the further she dragged me down to the water. Suddenly, I felt firm hands grab my shoulder and quickly pull me away from the woman. The woman released her grip on me and sunk further down into the dark waters. As soon as I emerged from the water, I realized that it was Grandpa Anton who had pulled me away. He must have dove into the water when he saw me going overboard. We quickly climbed back up, and as I coughed up all the water out, my Grandpa Anton was both furious and frightened. "What happened?" he asked. "Why did you go overboard?" A hand grabbed me," I said, still trying to catch my breath. "A hand grabbed me and pulled me down into the water. There was a woman, and she tried to pull me further and—" "Oh, so you saw her?" he asked. "Saw her? Wait, do you know her?" I asked, noting how Grandpa Anton's tone had suddenly changed. "Who is she?" "The Lady of the Sea," he simply said. "Who is she?" I asked again. My Grandpa Anton then began to tell me that he himself had not heard of this woman when he first moved here. On his first night in the lighthouse, he had heard the sound of a woman crying by the beach. He had gone out to see for himself and saw a frightening sight in the form of a ghostly woman dressed in a tattered dress with seaweeds and damp, stringy hair all over her face. He was nearly drawn towards the high waves as the woman called out to him in an eerie voice. He was able to get away simply by turning round back to the lighthouse. "The locals here call her the Lady of the Sea," Grandpa Anton said. "She is the ghost of a woman who was jilted by her lover and ended her life by jumping into the sea. She supposedly haunts the coves here in York, dragging any body into the sea." He would add that there were nights when he would see her emerge from the sea and stalk the beach, wailing and screaming. I asked if he considered moving closer to town, but he shook his head and said that as long as he was on land, she wouldn't get him. Grandpa Anton still lives in that lighthouse, but from time to time, I would beg him to move closer to the town. I really didn't want him to live near a dangerously frightening cove anymore.